I'm the princess of the night, so of course they run in fright. They feel threatened and unsure,
so let's heighten your allure.
I don't think you understand. I bring darkness to their land.
But what causes them to flee
must be my supremacy.
Make it so they can't resist,
so that we can coexist.
You'll be welcome in their clique.
Talking loud should do the trick.
Turn your social life around. Ditch those boots and homely crown. I can help with one small fee. Give your princesshood to me.
But how can I be more sexy?
I'll teach you.
Oh, and in return I will make you a princess. That is a good deal.
Spooky! Welcome, boys and girls, to Strange Stories, an evening of weird tales and otherworldly fables. This is Pony Me Bro inviting you to join me on the other side of that ethereal chasm, that yawning gulf betwixt the mind and the heart, reason and insanity, a single destination reached by many paths, fear, horror, and mind-numbing terror. Break! Starting. Okay, I had to spam clap and let them know that I'm starting the stream. Welcome! Once again, as I said, it's been another week, so we're doing another episode. In fact, this week I stared deep into the heart of darkness myself and witnessed a true horror in the form of my daily caloric intake. I'm not a big guy, for you, 5'11", around 176 pounds, last I checked, but I've been working out regularly about 3 to 4 days a week on average for the better part of a year now, and I'm hell-bent on shedding a few vanity pounds in the form of a belly pouch and love handles. And I really do work out. I bought a gym membership, I've studied up on the Fit Sticky, tried out a number of routines. I make it a habit to watch tutorials online to make sure I'm using the right form. I try to always work to failure to adequately fatigue the muscles and burn calories, anything you can think of, but the belly is still with me. Scary was admitting to myself that my 32, 34 jeans were too tight in the waist and that I had to give up and move to a 34, 34. I'm aware that this sounds insane to everybody listening because my wife tells me that I'm insane, but that single act of acquiescence rang like a funeral bell in my mind, reminding me of my gradually decaying body and thus mortality. And that's what vanity does to a person. I'm in good health, no chronic problems or ailments to speak of. I don't even think I have any allergies. I just want to look better naked, which is the sort of neurotic life goal that comfortable people set for themselves. So after stubbornly working and getting nowhere with my skinny guy gut, I set myself up with MyFitnessPal, which is an app that Fit is enthusiastic about that helps you track your calories and macronutrients, and it truly was frightening. Mrs. Bro is a bit of a health nut, so I took for granted that I was eating well, but until I started counting them, I had no idea how many calories I was actually ingesting on average each day, which sort of painted the picture that I wasn't able to put together myself for the last year or more. I've always been a big eater, but once my mid-20s hit, it started to catch up with me. The pregnancy didn't help either as those sympathy pounds piled on. Now I have it under control, and I'm going on a cut for a while just to see if I can increase the number of clothes in my closet that will fit properly in time for Nightmare Nights Dallas in a few weeks. Speaking of nightmares, that is the subject of tonight's episode and the song we played at the start. Given that MLP is my home board and that a fair share of my listeners, implying listeners, I think we have 2 right now. Thank you for listening. Are horse fuckers. I felt it was only fair to play one for the home crowd, so to speak, and read some suitably spooky fanfics. I do not read fan fiction. It's not that I'm a snob. It's just that I've tried and I don't care for it. I've had different stories recommended to me and I try to read them just because I like Pony. And, if there's more ways for me to enjoy that, I'll do it. I'll watch the show. I'll watch the Equestria Girls movies when they come out. I will read the comics. I will listen to music. I watch different fan things like Mentally Advanced, which are really good. Friendship is Witchcraft, obviously. So fanfic, like that could open up a whole new world of pony enjoyment if I could get into it, and I just can't for the life of me. But we're going to see if we can change that tonight. I stopped by the FimFiction thread that's going on right now to get some ideas. So for those anons that contribute some, thank you. I highlighted a story that I was hoping to get a guest reader on, what is it? Naguib. There's a lot of dialogue in that one between Twilight and Fluttershy, so I felt like that would be a really good opportunity to do a reading with another person. But I think I'll try and plan that a little bit better in the future rather than trying to just spring things on people at the last second. And instead, we will do a reading of one that was recommended, A Once and Future Darkness. So it looks like we're up to 3 now. Thank you for joining. Let me see if I can figure out who is listening. Viewer list. Darkbow Pictures with us in the audience. Hey! One of our fellow MLP managers. Thank you for tuning in. So, without further ado, let's cue up that spooky music and begin A Once and Future Darkness. I might cringe a couple times just because I'm aware that instead of reading the sort of stories we normally read, I'm going to be trying to find voices for the pony characters that we all know and love, and I'm not prepared for that at all. So let's just jump into it. Twilight Sparkle climbed out of bed and walked to the balcony. It was nearly midnight in Canterlot, and her guest bedroom in Celestia's palace looked down from the edge of the mountain onto the city far below. The lighted streets flowed like burning rivers through the darkness, pouring down the foothills in blocks and causeways into the humid valley. Vague sounds drifted up despite the late hour, a constant low murmur of voices and hoofsteps that echoed against the hard stones. She felt the noise as much as heard it. It was cool up high, almost chilled. The ponies below sweltered in the July heat, but on Celestia's mountain she could see her breath fogging in the air, and for a moment a long-forgotten memory seized her mind. It was winter, and she was a filly, roaring with Spike, pretending her breath was smoke and his was fire, and both of them were dragons perched atop a hoard of books and toys and clothes, stolen from her brother's drawers. She smiled and closed her eyes. A mountain breeze swept over the balcony, tussling her mane, and she stretched out her wings to let it ruffle her feathers as well. A nice night to fly, but she had an early train to catch. Back to bed then. She pushed away from the marble balustrade and was about to step inside when a silver light caught her eye. Curious, she looked up. The moon was too low, bloated and full. It drifted across the sky like an overloaded boat. It bumped against the mountaintop, knocking loose a small avalanche, and then it slowly bounced its way around until it snagged on the highest tower of Celestia's castle. I'm sorry, the moon did this? Is the moon, like, is it actually basketball size in Equestria? Like when you pretend to grab the moon with your thumb and your finger because of the perspective? I think it might be. Okay. The moon is small in Equestria and it's hitting the castle. A penanted spire scraped a deep gouge in the moon's surface before snapping free to tumble to the earth below. She expected the moon to continue on its way then, but it seemed to be lodged on the castle. It filled half the sky above her, as large as a mountain itself. Its lantern glow bathed the world in a gentle, cold light. Wings fluttered in the shadows, and she turned to see a motley collection of Pegasus night owls flying up to the moon. They swarmed around like moths, and then as one they put their hooves against the cratered regolith and pushed. Slowly, the moon lifted off the tower, bumped against the mountain again, and resumed its ponderous drift across the night sky. The Pegasi let out a ragged cheer and descended back into the city. So, that was nice. Crisis averted. Having the moon stuck on the castle would have been a tremendous headache for the Royal Astronomy Corps. Twilight smiled and gave the receding moon a little wave with her wingtip. That is most unusual, Luna said beside her. She leaned over the railing to get a better view of the moon as it vanished over the horizon. Well, it is a full moon, Twilight said. My mom told me once that moon was closer when it was full. Luna smiled at that. And you believe her? Well, when I was a foal, I did. But then she gave me a book on astronomy for my birthday, and it had a whole chapter on the phases of the moon and how they're really just a visual artifact of our position relative to the moon and the sun, and that the moon never really changes, and that ponies who believe the moon gets closer or further from us really need to study more. She paused for a moment, realizing she was babbling. Luna, is this a dream? Twilight Sparkle woke covered in sweat. The thin sheets tangled around her legs. Luna was nowhere around, which was fortunate because she felt sticky and had a slight headache behind her horn and wasn't really in the mood for company. She mumbled and kicked away the blankets, rolling onto her side in search of a cooler section of the bed. The July heat in Ponyville offered no quarter, even at night. She fanned her wings a few times, trying to stir a breeze in the thick, cloying air, but the eddies teased her feathers for only a moment before dying. Something about the summer hated everything cool and refreshing. Outside, viewed dimly through the gauze curtains draped across her balcony door, the moon was a solitary star high in the black vault of night. It was full and small, barely the size of a child's marble, and Twilight gave it a grumpy frown. Stupid moon. Stupid summer. She didn't remember falling asleep, but when she opened her eyes again, it was dawn. Summer struck with a vengeance the next morning. It wasn't scorching, Ponyville was not a desert, but on some days when the winds died and a glum, humid haze drifted in from the ever-free forest, ponies forgot what it was like to feel dry. The air pressed against them like wet cotton. It invaded their lungs, it drenched their coats and left them swimming through the streets. Ponies darted from shadow to shade, hiding in the lee of buildings and beneath the trees until they recovered their breath for the dash to the next refuge from the sun. Pegasi suffered the most. The thick coats that kept them warm in the high reaches of the atmosphere became suffocating blankets. Their feathers caught the moist air like sponges, turning scraggly and limp. Their cloud homes became ovens, and they tore open the roofs and walls and floors in a desperate bid to entice a breeze. Earth ponies seemed fine, Twilight noted. Applejack apparently didn't even notice the heat. She just sipped on her lemonade, a relaxed smile on her face as she listened to Rarity moan about the weather. Twilight had long since tuned Rarity out. The three of them sat beneath a sun awning outside the Hayseed Cafe in central Ponyville, waiting for their lunch orders to arrive. They'd been waiting for a while. Being a princess did not result in faster food delivery, but the waiter kept their glasses full of icy lemonade. He deserved a good tip, Twilight decided. And my mane, Rarity wailed. It just curls up like a spring. I spent the whole morning trying to straighten it out, and... Twilight stopped paying attention again. It was at least the third or fourth time Rarity had mentioned her mane since they sat down to eat, and she should be so lucky to listen to Rarity talk about her mane. Listen to this scrub princess talking so offhandedly about one of the better poems. I'm sorry, that was unprofessional. Let me continue. Instead, she focused on her breathing and how cool the crystal floor of her palace would feel when she got back to it and flopped down on her belly. You all right, Twilight? Applejack broke into her musing. You look a bit beat. Yeah, just... Twilight trailed off with a yawn. Sorry, just tired. I didn't sleep very well last night. The heat kept me up. You and me both, darling, Rarity said. She pushed a stray purple ringlet away from her face. I was tossing and turning all night. Applejack took another sip from her lemonade. Aw, it's not so bad. Some years are like this. A little hotter than others. It'll pass soon. Twilight's ears perked at that. Really? How soon? Maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. Applejack tilted her head. September? Gregorian calendar confirmed. Or maybe she could go visit her brother. There was still snow in the Crystal Empire at this time of year. She could fill a swimming pool with it and jump in, and no pony could make her come out again because she was a princess, and princesses were allowed to swim in the snow as much as they wanted, and it would feel wonderful between her feathers and... Twilight, Rarity's voice broke her reverie, your food is here. So it was! A house salad with bits of orange sat before her. The arugula was a bit wilted, but the citrusy bite of the orange was cool and sharp in her mouth. For the next several minutes, conversation lulled as the three of them ate. So, Applejack finally said, how's that boutique going? Slow this week, Rarity said. No pony wants to shop for clothes in this weather. I sold a few sun hats, but otherwise, well, see for yourself. She gestured with a hoof at the street. It wasn't crowded, but every pony Twilight saw was naked in deference to the punishing heat. Even the fashion horses who normally wore saddles went bare. Sorry to hear that, Applejack said. If you want, come on out to the farm. The orchard's nice and cool. I might just do that, Rarity paused to yawn. Pardon me. On second thought, I might go out there just to take a nap. Last night was just atrocious. Too hot, and when I did finally get to sleep, I kept having the weirdest dreams. Dreams. Something she could sympathize with. Twilight took another sip of her lemonade and tried to keep up with the conversation until their meal was done, and they exchanged half-hearted farewells before slinking back into the sun. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Ponies kept to their homes. The afternoon market was empty except for a few Earth Pony farmers who spent the day chatting with each other while they waited for customers. High above, the sun seemed content to stretch out the hours, drifting reluctantly towards evening. Twilight silently willed the sun to move faster, anything to hasten the coming night. So, you don't like summer? Luna asked. She floated a dainty teacup to her lips and took a sip. Oh, I love summer, Twilight said. She shifted her weight, careful not to rock the small rowboat, and filled her own teacup from the steaming pot. It was a jasmine blend, one of her favorites. It's just this heat I can't stand. Summers in Canterlot aren't so bad. At least it was nice on the boat. Twilight took a sip of tea and looked out over the waves. The wind was low and the ocean calm. In the distance, a smudge on the horizon might have been a storm or a range of mountains beyond some unseen, distant shore. Canterlot is in the mountains, Luna said. She took another sip and carefully set her cup down on the tray. The tiny boat was barely wide enough to hold it, and the two of them filled up all its remaining space. It never gets too warm, but the winters can be fierce. That's what fires are for, and good books to curl up with. Luna allowed herself a smile. So they are, and if I can be honest, I enjoy the winter. The nights are longer. And it's easier to see the stars, Twilight said with a grin. She looked out again at the ocean. You know, it's funny. This doesn't feel like a dream. Who says it is? Well, it must be. I don't remember coming here, and there's no reason for me to be on a boat with you in the middle of the ocean. Twilight peered over the edge into the dark waters. A silver flicker caught her eye, a school of mackerel darting away from her shadow. Maybe it is real then. Feels real. Twilight tapped her hoof in a small puddle collecting in the bottom of the boat. It was briny and cool against her skin. But it's still a dream, just like last night. Maybe dreams can be real, Luna said. She peered beneath the silver tray. We seem to be taking on some water. There must be a leak. The water was up over her hooves now. She quickly drank the last of her tea and used the cup to scoop water out of the boat. Anyway, dreams aren't real. They're just our minds attempting to make sense of the stimuli we experience each day. It's why they're so chaotic and nonsensical. Chaotic? Luna snorted. They seem that way because ponies have forgotten how to dream, Twilight. Half the world is dreams, and it is the magical half. But now I am back, thanks to you, my friend, and ponies are starting to remember. What's that supposed to mean? Remember how to dream? The teacup wasn't doing much to empty the water, which lapped at her fetlocks now. Ah, as to that, Luna shrugged, that is something ponies must learn for themselves. But have no fear, Twilight. We are on the verge of something wondrous. Well, that's vaguely reassuring. On a more pressing note, do you have a bigger cup? I have a teapot. Will that help? Worth a try. Twilight tossed her cup over the side and grabbed the teapot from Luna. It held 10 times as much as the cup, but despite her hurried bailing, the boat sank deeper and deeper. The highest waves spilled water over the gunwale. We might have to leave. Pity. I enjoy sailing. Luna hopped up on the bowsprit, using her wings for balance. Can you swim? Yes. You? Twilight kept bailing until the gunwale sank beneath the surface and the ocean flooded in to fill the boat. The teacups and napkins and tea cozies all floated to the surface while the rest of their enterprise sank into the depths. She treaded water with her hooves. Yes, but I'll just fly if that's all right. Luna hovered a comfortable distance away. Now tell me, Twilight, doesn't this feel real? It did. The press of the water against her chest, the cool depths chilling her legs, the current teasing her tail, the waves breaking over her head, filling her nostrils with water and salt. She blew them clear and struggled to stay upright. It all felt very real, and a tiny worm of fear began crawling inside her heart. It does, Luna, she gasped. It feels very... Twilight woke with a gasp. A cold flush shot down her spine, standing her coat on end, but just as quickly the suffocating summer heat returned. She groaned and struggled out of the sodden sheets. The crystal floor was cool under her hooves, and she flopped onto it gratefully. Puddles collected on the floor beneath her bed, and she ignored them. Stupid summer. Stupid dreams. She blinked blearily out her balcony door, where the full moon peered down at her misery. Stupid moon. In time, she managed to sleep. The sun rose that morning like a pregnant Pegasus, slow, ponderous, and huge. Its rays dug into Twilight's eyes, prying between her lids, dragging her forcefully into the world of the waking. And, Celestia, damn it, it was already hot. Even the earth ponies seemed to feel it today. They trudged to and fro in the Ponyville streets, and the few who already worked the stalls slumped against their produce. The sun was a hammer, and the wet air a rope around their necks. A thick haze concealed the horizon, blending it with the sky in a gray smudge that seemed to hem in the town. Twilight couldn't even see the Canterlot Mountains from her balcony. She stood and frowned at her bed. It was still sodden in the center. Water dripped onto the floor below. The scent of salt filled the air, and the sheets were crusty with brine. A starfish clung to her headboard. So, that was interesting. She shook out her coat, sending a cloud of salt crystals falling to the floor. She hopped over the balcony railing and flew down the street. A few ponies waved or raised their voices in greeting, and she forced herself to smile in return. What day was it? She couldn't remember. The cloying heat drove every meaningful fact from her brain, and it was all she could do to stumble into the shade of an enormous oak in the center of the town square. She closed her eyes for just a moment. Breathe in, breathe out. She let her mind drift while her body adjusted to the heat. Idle fantasies of snow and ice spun around her mind. Perhaps a visit to Celestia's palace, high on its mountain, was in order. She could drink from the crystal streams and soak her feathers in the glacial melt. And maybe visit her parents while she was there. Twilight? Hey, Twilight! She cracked an eye open to see Rainbow Dash standing a few feet away. The Pegasus fidgeted, leaning from hoof to hoof. Hey, Dash. Oh, good. I thought you were asleep. Dash held a hoof up over her eyes to block the sun. She looked as exhausted as Twilight felt, and her wings flapped weakly, creating a gentle breeze that kissed Twilight's coat with a cool touch. Do you have a minute? I guess. Twilight winced at the sudden intrusion of the sun and peered around the town square. There was no oak tree, nor any shadow. Say, Dash, have you, felt anything weird lately?